Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to use a real life example of someone's caretaking related case that has come up in US, which is an important case for everyone to understand more deeply than what has been understood about that case. And it involves all the topics that I have discussed in all my videos or many of my videos in this web page, because the topics that I have discussed there are relevant to this case, but because many people are unaware about the deeper repercussions or insidiousness of the topics I have discussed, and most of the world is actually unaware about these deeper repercussions. That's why it's necessary to understand this case at a very deep level. So first, I am going to post in my reference section all the videos that I've watched regarding this case. I've actually watched a few additional ones, but this is regarding the trial of a grandmother who was charged with murder of her granddaughter who she had left in the car. And because of child neglect laws that are prevalent in US and other things related to what happened to the child, the grandmother was convicted now by the jury for leading to the death of the child, right? And there, if you look at some of the answers and responses to many people of by the trial in the website of these YouTube pages, you will see that in the comment section there's a lot of outrage against her, that because this was the second death that happened in this grandmother's house. This is the second grandchild who has died. The first grandchild's case history was not used in this trial for different reasons related to whatever they are doing related to the investigation of possibly the first child, and maybe there were the ancillary factors that were responsible where they might have given a benefit of doubt also to someone, but when a second child has died, obviously now the suspicion rises that some intentional harm could have happened or a deep level neglect is going on. And here I don't deny that child neglect happened. And when I looked at the whole thing, I agree that the grandmother was neglectful. I also agree that she is culpable for the murder of the child or the death of the child, not murder, but she is responsible for the accidental death of the child. But there's deeper factors, according to my intuition, according to my experience with people and personality types who I can see are involved in this mother's life, the grandmother's life, and also the mother's life of this child, Uriel. And Uriel's death, if not investigated completely in the right way, if people do not understand what are the other ancillary conditions and factors that resulted in Uriel's death, it may lead to insidiousness and a deeper trouble both in this family's life as well as in the lives of people who live in this area, if people in this area do not wake up to all the ancillary factors that were responsible for Uriel's death. And there are in this trial itself multiple things that indicate that multiple other people were partly responsible and as equally culpable in Uriel's death. It's just that they don't know or they don't realize how they were culpable towards her death, and that realization needs to happen because they are going to be caretakers. They are currently also caretakers of other children. They have to be caretakers of their own health as well. They might eventually, as a result of the work they do, the kind of professional work they do. One of the daughters' family business is a roofing business. Another daughter's family business had glass name in it. So I'm assuming it is again a home construction related business. So both of them are doing construction work, and this thing that I'm talking about, so they will be employing construction workers also for the work that these people do. These workers who are employed by them, their health also is impacted by one of the factors that impacted this child's health potentially, that needs to be investigated, the evidence for which related to her death may still be present in the child's belongings, in the child's blood or body, if her body is still available for DNA analysis and other sampling, blood testing. I don't know if blood will be present for analysis, but if the medical examiner had collected some blood samples from the child, that would be beneficial. If they haven't collected, then also there are ancillary things that can be tested to figure out what I am talking about, and I'm going to present in this video, which are factors people might think are very unrelated factors, but the factors were present in the child's uh, death, according to my intuition, according to also some logical things that the all these witnesses said about the child and that day when something happened to this child. So, the outskirts sketches of the story that everyone heard from the media was that the grandmother had gone for lunch, and after she came back from lunch, she had the child placed in the back seat of her car, and the child was left in the back seat. She forgot about the baby, and a few hours later, when she found the baby, when the baby was discovered and some CPR was done, the baby had died already. When the paramedics came to help, the baby had already died, according to the paramedics. But the paramedics also described certain things about the baby that indicates to other ancillary factors. The father's testimony, two daughters' testimony also indicate places where certain deeper investigation needs to be done, because according to me, other people are also responsible for this baby's death, directly, indirectly, and maybe potentially maliciously as well. And the malicious thing I already mentioned in 4 videos back or 5 videos back, about the psychology of antisocial personalities or people with malicious intent, criminal intent. Sometimes, if they have some criminal or malicious intent going on about their someone they know, those people can do abnormal things to harm someone, but in the guise of pretending to help someone. This is something I myself witnessed as a child in my family life that happened to my mother. I never directly witnessed her getting directly poisoned by someone or directly physically harmed by someone. But indirectly, via the fights that were happening in my house, I knew she was getting harmed. Via the direct, overt abuse related verbal abuse that was happening to her, I knew she was emotionally hurt in the marriage. And then, while there were some critical things that were always criticized against my mother by my father about her, like he used to blame her for many things that my mother used to do normally, where many things she did were very beautiful things she did, very conscientiousness driven things she did, very responsible mother related things she did. But there were some aspects of things she did a few years before her death where she was not able to live up to her earlier life's conscientious patterns. As a result, there was some neglect that happened in our childhood. And that neglect, my dad started spinning the fact that the neglect is happening because my mother is having mental health issues, she is depressed, and all different kinds of narratives were spun by my dad. And when I was a young kid, until my at least my mid 20s, I completely believed my dad, or even early 20s. There was only one thing I didn't believe my dad about. But other than that, for majority of the things that my dad used to tell about my mother, I used to completely have faith about whatever my dad is saying, that is the truth about my mother. And but slowly, as I grew up as an adult and I lived in US, at that time I didn't have my dad's influence. So I had 13 years of life in US where I used to only occasionally visit my family in India. 5-6 times I must have visited them. But during that whole 13 years when I lived in US, I got the distance from my dad's narrative. I also met patients who are depressed, real depressed patients also. I also was undergoing depression myself slowly while living there. So I understood that yes, it is possible that my mother was depressed. But other than depression, the conditions of her life that was adding to her depression, I went through certain similar conditions of very mimicking my mother's life in some ways. And it's not that I simply understood my mother's depression. I was also meeting people, dating people. So from their perspective, I was also slowly opening up to the understanding of why my dad used to spin these narratives about my mom. So I started understanding actually both my parents' perspective about why their marriage was not working out, what was the problem zone in their marriage, what was the conflict related to the marriage. But I was also very eventually, because of multiple different kinds of abuse that happened to me via different people who entered my life, either as friends or as exes that I dated, or as a spouse also who I was married to very briefly in US. In all of these interactions, different levels and types of abuse, neglect, abuse from both sides, meaning I'm not saying I was a very perfect person, so I was also very verbally abusive. So all of these things materialized in our interactions with each other, which ended up slowly awakening me to the fact that, firstly, the fact that how my parents' patterns of abuse are now impacting me 10 years, 20 years later. Secondly, how the neglect that I have withstood in my childhood, I started getting more and more aware about the neglect, because then I finally understood I didn't have a close knit family. I didn't have a family to rely on for many things. There were multiple times in my life I was financially in a crunch or going through some health challenges, but no one in India even knew about those health challenges, because there was no one who really cared about me to speak to me at a deeper level. There was a cousin in India who would speak with me occasionally, but she was also very in her own world. So because she was in her own world, no one knew about the depth of my problems, because she's not the kind to talk about other people's problems, possibly whatever it was. No one There was no one who followed up with me about how are you doing. So that's the level of neglect I've gone through my life since childhood days. It's not that in childhood days anyone came and asked me how are you doing in childhood. That level of life also I didn't have with my parents. So I had a really neglectful childhood. So I understand the angst and rage of people, because I really, right now, when I'm trying to heal through this neglect related things, because the neglect is still ongoing and continuing, and right now the neglect is at such a level where people are also in denial of the fact that I have certain illnesses that could be really health harming, or that I need severe illness treatments and things like that. And it's up to them, they can live in denial. But if you deny that someone has a disease or someone has a life problem that is life threatening to them, doesn't mean that your denial will cause that problem from not manifesting. And which is what is also a factor in this Uriel baby's life, that there were other ancillary factors that they don't realize, or people in this area might need to wake up to, which impacts not just Uriel's. It already partly impacted her life but and led to her death, but it is also a factor which can lead to death of other ways for other babies in that area, if that other ancillary factor doesn't get resolved. And if the other ancillary factor of the family life that these girls are leading, if they don't resolve it, then it can result in death or harm of the kids of these family and other potential family members associated with other, distant families who are associated with this family, if someone other than the grandmother is culpable in Uriel's death. And I believe that someone is culpable. That's why I'm giving my narrative about my family history, just to give you a little bit context about how covert abuse happens. So in my mother's case, the narrative was she's depressed, she should take depression medication, and my dad forced her to go to a doctor to get some medications from the doctor. My mother didn't want to take the medications because she was having side effects, which I also, at that time, even if I didn't, I trusted my mother's narrative, because my mother was not a liar, and she was very rarely she would ever protest about anything unjust full happening in her life. And out of the 20 years of her married life that I witnessed, because my mother was present in my life from my apparently my 1 year my birth till 20 years of age. So for the 20 years that I coexisted with my mother, only 3 or 4 times I had seen her protest about something unjustful done to her. So she was a very quiet woman. She was a very tolerant woman. She tolerated everything that was unfair in her life. She took it in her stride and did the best she could according to whatever conditions of life she had in her life. And despite that, And when someone is really quiet and very quietly, reticently taking up a lot of abuse, sometimes that emboldens an abuser. And if an abuser is a clever abuser, they use that also against that person who is quiet. Because if you are a quiet personality, a abuser will use your ability to tolerate a lot of things to keep on torturing you, pushing you, and pushing the limits of what they can torture you with. And that is what I believe slowly was happening to her, that her abuse, and it was a very covert and subtle abuse. That's why I didn't understand it at that time. But almost 10 years later, 20 years later, slowly I started figuring out where her something malicious was going on with her. Like, for example, if you are a teen kid, many girls do this when we are with our moms, and our moms have some makeup and stuff that they use for makeup. We like to explore our mother's makeup, right? Many kids do that. And my mother, being very fair looking and also very socially shy and not very too much fashionability oriented, and I'm also that way as well because of her only. But because she had a natural beauty, she didn't used to use a lot of makeup, because she also had financial abuse going on. She didn't even have anyone who would give her the finances to buy makeup. The only makeup she had access to were one lipstick, two perfumes, all gifted by someone else. Even her purses were gifted by someone else. Even her saris were gifted by someone else. Even her jewelry was gifted by someone else. Most of these gifts that she, anything that a woman wears, 90% of her things were gifted by her family before marriage, or during the marriage, when during festival times, if we visited her family, if they gave her some money to buy something, that's the only time she had some financial access. Other than that, she didn't used to get anything to buy for herself. She very rarely got some money from my dad to buy anything for herself. And there too, I only saw once or twice my mother buy blouses for herself or petticoats for herself. So while the saris she got were from 10 years back, gifted by someone else, most of the other things or sometimes once in 4-5 years, if she had enough money, she would buy one new sari for herself. Other than that, the barest minimum finances were always provided to her, according to me. And she was also not a very extravagant person. So both my mother, not being a extravagant person also, I never saw her even fight with my dad about the fact that he never gives her anything, gets her anything for even simple things that people need in their homes for simpler home functions. Does that mean that there was a lot of neglect happening? No. But if a partner loves you, they will do certain things for you that was missing in my mother's journey in her life as a partner and as a wife. And as a result, but while you're a child and observing this, you don't find it odd. You just think this is a normal pattern. It's only become an odd pattern when you observe other people doing something that is amiss in your life, and not just something that is amiss in the sense that, oh, this person's husband, like, which is also happens to women, that women will, and I'm digressing when saying all these things, but people can have envy about another person's spouse giving them jewelry, giving them gifts, giving them car and things like that. My mother didn't even have that envious personality. She didn't care that, because my dad's friends, many of his friends were very loving towards their spouses, so they would get something nice and lovely for their wives. And people would usually gossip about such things also. But my mother, instead of complaining about it, she chose to stop socializing only with people, because obviously if you're going to get hurt if you're socializing and people are talking about, my husband gives me this, my husband is this way, my husband is that way, and if you're covertly being abused, can you talk about that abuse? It's very difficult for a woman who's a quieter personality and then a shy personality, and then if something very bad is happening to you, very hard to talk about those things. So my mom essentially became a social recluse as a result of it. So it was not depression, but it was shame that was causing her to not explain what is going on in her life, or even if she tried to explain, she was also very getting used in social circles by my dad, that he would covertly, subtly say things to her, passive aggressive things to her, demeaning things to her, or make fun of her in a way that everyone else thinks that my dad has a great sense of humor, he's just been very jovial towards his wife, when the reality was he was being hurtful towards his wife. Because the same thing that can be appreciated as a joke by many people can also be taken as an offense by many other people. Now, if you are a sensitive partner, if you are a loving partner, the thing that hurts your spouse, you will make sure that you will not emotionally hurt your spouse by saying it. Or if you have said it in a way that later on made you realize that this was hurtful towards your spouse, you will ensure that you don't repeat that. That is what a good spouse does, a caring partner does, right? But when you are not caring, you use the same things that a person can understand about another human being. That understanding, they can use it as a dual-edged sword. If you are supportive of the person who's your partner, you will take care of the partner and you will defend your partner. Whereas if you are hating your partner, disliking your partner, wanting to cruelly abuse your partner, you will use the same things to subtly torture them without. If you are a cruel partner, you will subtly be torturing them with no one understanding you are torturing them, which is what happened. And I didn't realize at that time when I was growing up that emotional psychological torture was going on with her. Verbal one I could understand, but psychological one you can't understand, and sexual one also you don't realize until you yourself have some sexual relationships with someone. So that's why it took me almost 10, 20, 30 years to 25 years to understand, slowly over time, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, every few years a new insight would emerge about the abuse that was going on with her, that I wouldn't have realized until I have context, until I have gone through that, or I have had some friends who have gone through that and they are sharing their abuse related things with me, or I'm watching a TV show, movie show where such level abuse related parameters are being shown. And then you can, if you are wise enough, then you can from multiple sources understand that, oh, this is what was going on with my mother, right? So this was happening. And the second thing, where I didn't physically see anything, physically witness direct malicious things happening to her, but what happened was, when she used her she was given 2 perfumes. One perfume was gifted by her brother way before I was born, possibly, or while I was a toddler in that age. At that time she was gifted a perfume. So it was a 10-year-old perfume that she had, and another perfume was a new perfume given by someone. Both these perfumes, as a mischievous teenager, I tried them on as a teenager. One time as a mischievous teenager, just wanting to explore my mother's stuff, I tried out her lipstick and tried out her perfume. Another time when I was presenting something in I was comparing at a event in our building's community function. At that time I wore a sari, mother's sari, and used her other perfume. The time when I used my mother's other perfume, nothing happened to me. But the time I used the perfume that was a recent perfume from Middle East, I immediately passed out. And I thought at that time that perfume was very strong. Like it was Itra, a jasmine perfume, jasmine-like perfume. No, not jasmine, it was Mogra. So that perfume, I was so heady, so strong, I passed out. So that one, I don't know if it was tampered with, because it was in a roll-on type of a bottle. So like how you have the roll-on deo sprays in India, it was not that big a size. It was a small Itra size bottle, but it was a roll-on one, no one can tamper with. But the other perfume that my uncle had given 10 years back, that perfume bottle had screw lid. It is a Charlie's perfume, so anyone can easily open it and add anything into it to tamper with it. Because the first time I used it, I didn't have a problem. Maybe total, I think two times I used it, and the third time when I wanted to use it, that bottle was completely empty. And understand this, from for the 10 years, 12 years that my mom owned that perfume bottle, she hardly ever went out. I can count like handful of times that she has gone out for social events where she will wear perfume. So if only, and the perfume in total might have been used by her and me maximum like 5 or 6 times maximum. That is also a large number, I feel. So that if you have used a bottle of perfume only 5-6 times, majority of the perfume's content should be present in it, right? But during my college days, when I was going for sari day, the first time I went for sari day, I had, I think, sprayed that perfume and gone. The second time I wanted to go for sari day, which was a few years after my teen event when I had first explored using her perfume, I couldn't find that perfume bottle, or I found the bottle nearly empty, and I was surprised, why is my mom's bottle nearly empty? And then another time when I wanted to use the perfume, I saw that the perfume bottle is completely empty, and I found it completely strange, because if I am not using it, my mother is not using it. I used it like 3 or 4. I wanted to use it 2 times when I couldn't use it, and 2 times I did use it. And my mother was also, during those same years when the perfume suddenly disappeared, she started being dizzy, she started being drowsy. And understand that perfume has alcohol in it. Alcohol, if poured into your drinks, in any type of alcohol, if in fact it is not even a consumable alcohol but a different alcohol which shouldn't be consumed by people, but if someone has malicious intent, they can put it into your drinks. And my mother used to have a separate drinking water supply for her fasting days. So if someone with malicious intent puts it in her drinks, she will be drowsy. If alcoholic material can make you drowsy, if someone along with that alcohol mixed some medicine in it and then put it in her drinks, then also she will be drowsy. And my mother was given a SSRI. I knew about SSRI at that time because I had read a newspaper article while I was not in pharmacy school by then. When she was prescribed a SSRI, I had read Prozac Nation relate something like that type of article about depression in newspaper. And because I had read that article about depression in newspaper, and I had just checked why is my mother not wanting to have her medicines, and for some curiosity, again, if you're a curious child, you might look at it. So I had looked at her medicine and I seen it was a SSRI. And later on I recollect it being a SSRI because anyway, it had correlated to the depression article. It was a medication that depressed patients do take, and my mother was refusing it. And later, 40 years later, like when I was in my late 30s or mid 30s, when I was prescribed an SSRI, I found out that I was getting extremely drowsy with SSRIs. So I had to stop taking SSRI. I also remembered my mother was getting drowsy, right? So considering both of this, I told my doctor to give me a medicine that will not cause me drowsiness. So she had changed my medicine to a different class for depression, and I had used that depression medicine temporarily when I was in US. So while I did that, and while my mother was refusing her medicine, now this is a thing that in India, many people do not have this understanding and belief system that if a medication is causing you drowsiness or some side effect that is not agreeing with your functional levels, or giving you a side effect which will cause damage in your body, at those time points you're supposed to not consume that medication. You're supposed to either change your medication or you can refuse taking your medication. So my mother had done nothing wrong when she was refusing her medication, but my dad still spun the narrative that she's doing something wrong. And when I went to US and practiced as a pharmacist, that's when I finally understood that of course a patient has a right to refuse taking something that is causing them excess drowsiness. And the excess drowsiness was causing my mother to not make breakfast for us early in the morning that she usually used to. She used to prepare our school tiffins, and in our school tiffins we used to have like sandwiches or fruits and things like that. She would chop up and put it in our tiffin, and we would eat it in our 10 o'clock 10:30 break time during school breaks. So that thing had stopped by my mother because she was extremely drowsy. She was not able to wake up. I didn't understand. Later on, I put two and two together that she was drowsy because once or twice I saw her being passed out on the floor, and as a very, I was curious but not that curious teen. So when I saw her lying on the floor, I just thought maybe my mother is sleeping on the floor. But now later when I am older, I'm realizing that she was not just ordinarily sleeping on the floor, because we do have family life where sometimes occasionally we would end up sleeping on the floor when family would come to visit us and things like that. Or I just if some family members of mine, if they had back problems, they also used to occasionally sleep on the floor. So the first time I saw her lying like that, I hadn't put two and two together that she might have passed out. But later on, now, on recollection of the memory, I realized she might have passed out. And the fact that she was not able to wake up early in the morning, that also shows that some excess drowsiness and grogginess was happening, which can happen if she says took her medicines and found that it is causing drowsiness. That's why she stopped taking it, because my dad was consistently complaining she's not doing her job as a mother and a wife. So then she might have stopped taking it as a result. But because my dad had malicious intent, he was likely poisoning her. This is a thing I can't prove right now because it's 20 years down back memory, 25 to 30 years old memory. So something that happened 30 years back, I can't prove unless, even now in some of her clothes, if some chemicals can be found in her clothes that shouldn't be there in her clothes, then only it can be provable even now whether she was indeed getting poisoned via various sources. But some repeat of what things were poisoning her and leading to her drowsiness and less functionality in the early mornings. And what started happening was, earlier she used to make us lunch by 1:30, 2 o'clock, or 1:30. But the moment like these extreme drowsiness like things started happening, her lunchtime also shifted, and we were now getting lunch at 2:30 or 3 o'clock instead some days. So this thing again, he used to complain constantly like she's not doing her thing and this and that, and he used to get a lot of sympathy from everyone, which is also a mental illness pattern some people with antisocial personalities develop, where they want false sympathy. Like, you complain about your life, but after you have complained, sometimes you also find solution after you have had enough of the negative things going on in your life. But someone who is maliciously intentioned, they complain not because they have had enough of the problems in their life. They enjoy pretending to be caretakers. He enjoyed, my dad had the personality type who enjoys pretending to be a caretaker of someone, but by deliberately harming them and then pretending to be a caretaker. There are other antisocial personalities who will just not pretend also to be anyone's caretaker, but they will slowly maliciously be doing certain things. By omission, they are bringing difficulty in people's life. By deliberately choosing to not do something and deliberately maliciously choosing to do something, they bring ill intentions and harm into someone's life. And these type of personalities are needed to be investigated in this Uriel child's case, because I believe something like that did transpire in that child's life. And what are the indicators of what I believe that transpired, that is not simply the grandmother being responsible, is firstly that day, first I didn't know the context of what happened while she was babysitting that child. I first saw the video of the grandfather. So when I saw the video of the grandfather said that usually he is the one who picks up the grandchild from his daughter's homes, and he also said that at least 5 days a week, sometimes his daughter's children would be in his homes and they would caretake the child sometimes. And so it was apparently they were establishing the fact that it was a regular practice for the child being caretaken in their home, and for a few hours possibly. So, and he said usually he would pick up the child and the father of the child would take the child back to their home. So that was the usual pattern. But that day, that usual pattern itself had been broken. And the daughter, who's Uriel's mother, she said that in her witness testimony that she had a hair appointment, and obviously she being a mother of, she was at that point of time, she said she has a 4-year-old in her home and a 4-month-old. Now that 4-month-old was born after Uriel died. But other than the 4-month-old, she still had at least 2 children to take care of. So as she had young children to take care of, that mother, when she had a hair appointment, and mothers can tend to be like that when you are busy caretaking child, and she was also busy helping her husband in his business. So because of her busy lifestyle, people can get a little lax about writing down their appointments and things like that. So she said that every time she went to the hair salon for her hair appointment, the hair salon only would message her about her appointments. So she never used to write down when her appointments will happen. So that day when she got a text message about her appointment, she went and asked her mother whether her mother would take care of the child. And now the mother, being a grandmother who does indeed take care of the children other days as well, she agreed. But I didn't understand that day why the mother was asked to go and pick up the child, when the mother usually, that day the mother also had Bible study group. The daughter said that she doesn't remember whether her mother told her about the Bible study group, or whether the mother told her that the mother did tell her that she's going to go for lunch with her friends. So imagine if she had a Bible study in the morning, and maybe in the midst of Bible study some texting had happened, or during Bible study break some texting had happened. The mother already had a busy day. She might have gone, I don't know, and the mother didn't give testimony, but her mother's testimony is necessary. If let's say she went at it, and because Bible study like things usually happen early in the morning, at least in our places, or it can happen in the afternoon, but she went, or she may not have had a Bible study, but she went with her Bible study to have that lunch. Possibly something like that happened. I don't know what happened, but essentially the mother, the storyline picks up that the daughter has said she usually got a text around 9:30, 10:30 about her hair appointment. So if she has got a text around that early morning time, usually, are you always, if you're a busy mother, you're not ever going to have your phone all the time with you. So if the text came around 10:30 or 9:30 to 10:30, and she saw it, she must have told her mother around 11 o'clock or something that mom, and all these timelines of the texts are very necessary to be looked into as well for multiple reasons. And no one has done this timeline of the text analysis, but it is necessary because it establishes certain things related to the mother, that a grandmother, that is important for other people to understand, that how much mothers sometimes give without complaining, how much, if even if a mother has given a lot without complaining, when they are stressed out, how less they are supported by people. These are the things that needs to be understood by this grandmother's case as well. And she was a responsible school principal. Like, if you were a principal of a school, you had to have had some responsible traits in you. You couldn't have been a neglectful person. Otherwise, normal school teachers don't go. If you were a neglectful school teacher, or you had some personality defects while managing time and managing things, you would not have been a principal of a school. So her being a principal of a school, and I don't know how long she was a principal of a school, but if she was a long term, like 10-20 years she had been a principal of a school, that shows that she was a very responsible person. So all these things regarding the mother is important criteria to understand that if that mother had all this, and if these two daughters, mother was not a strong woman, not a woman who had some good ethical, moral, work ethics, or good principles while working, these two daughters also would never have been able to manage. Like, it is a mother who usually teaches a daughter how to manage their life, or how to do multiple functions in their life. So if a mother is very competent in doing many things, the daughter will also be competent. If the mother tolerates a lot of different things, the daughter is also going to be capable of tolerating a lot of things. Whatever is the mother capable of showing to a child, the child will pick it up from the mother, because mothers being the primary caretakers most of the time in most of the current children's histories, their patterns of behavior actually influences the child's patterns of behavior. Okay, so in many aspects of life. So these women, they being successful business women also, they wouldn't have had that quality if they didn't pick up how to manage efficiently certain things. So a principal has to efficiently manage many things. A principal has to oversee many things. So all of those qualities that the mother had of efficiently managing things, efficiently overseeing different people, efficiently doing monitoring so many kids in the school, that is the same thing that has led these two women to now have been good mothers to two or more children, right? As well as good business women. So this thing they need to consider, because this shows that they didn't have a neglectful mother, nor did they have a careless mother, nor did they have a callous mother, nor did they have a mother who was not competent. The woman in the story, the grandmother, is a very stoic personality. So I understand she might have been a stoic mother, she might have been a strict mother, because being a principal, you also become very strict because you have so many naughty children also sometimes in your school. So you can tend to become very strict also, a strict disciplinarian. So it's possible that she was a strict disciplinarian mother, but she was not a neglectful mother, which I think is an important factor to understand why they kept trusting her to take care of their children. And the first daughter never had any incidences when two of her boys stayed with the mother, and the daughter was also staying with the mother for a while. So they had lesser problems because the daughter was involved in the child caretaking when she was staying with the mother, right? So there was some joint caretaking going on, and that joint caretaking that happened possibly 8-10 years previously, because the first daughter's two children are the one child is 13 years old, right? So if they had been caretaking that baby when he was a baby, and for 10 years if the grandmother has had history of caretaking that boy, understand that she couldn't have been that neglectful, especially because she had some help also from the daughter, especially because it was 10 years back, so she was also younger at that point of time. So all of these are important factors also to consider, that with age also certain things happen to us, happen to women, that needs to be considered in her case when her trials, further investigations or further things are going to happen for her. Okay, so this is another thing people need to consider. And then finally, what else that needs to be considered is the timeline, that now she's a 67-year-old woman. When the child died, that means she was possibly 65, or when the child died she was 67, I don't know, but she was a retired person by then. So she was a little less, when you've retired you don't have that strict life of following a timetable, following a routine, so you can become a little lax in your routines. You're not, as I am a semi-retired person because I have not been working for the last 7-8 years professionally, so I have a very relaxing lifestyle where I get up at different times, I eat occasionally lunches at different times, dinners at different times. I've had a very flexible timeline in the last few years, whereas when I was working, and all those years when I was working, I had a very strict routine that I have to have breakfast around this time, lunch around this time, dinner around this time. So when you become retired or you're not working, you become a little laxer in life, a little bit more relaxed in life. Plus you have also aged in life, so if you have aged in life, age related health factors can also impact. And then there's the third factor which I've been talking about in some of my videos, which is earth pollution parameters, because the longer you stay in a particular area and the higher the density of population of the area, like as the population is increasing or as the number of things that impact the environmental pollution is essentially increasing, the increase in your environmental pollution factor slowly starts increasing and building up body related health issues as well in your body, starts building up organ damages in your body, which can also influence now your overall health status. And with the mother, the grandmother, this is definitely happening. It's also happening to the child, the baby that died. It was also happening to everyone else who lives in that area. Earth pollution's effect, no one can escape earth pollution's effect. Environmental pollution's effect, no one can escape local environment pollution related effect, home environment pollution related effect, environmental pollution of everywhere, any business you own, any business you work in, any place you visit for your things like hairspraying and things like that. Every business's environmental pollution impact eventually occurs in that area's population's environment pollution, overall environment pollution, which then indirectly or directly impacts your health. And in the case of the baby Uriel, I believe it directly impacted her health. I don't know if some direct poison was also given to her, but already environment pollution related factor did impact her health. And the final thing, there is the paramedic said that the baby was really hot when they touched the baby, and the news, the trial related news said it was a hot 90-degree day in Florida. But when I looked at November 1, 2022's temperatures in Florida, and I tried to look at Wichala's temperature, I couldn't, this Hardy County's temperature, I couldn't find it. But I found was it Tampa? I think it was Tampa. Sorry, I think it was Tampa. So if it was Tampa or whichever big city of Florida is 1 hour away from Hardy County, that place's temperature I found, and that place's temperature on November 1st was actually 76 degrees, near 76 degrees was the highest temperature. And it was only 1.5 hour away from Hardy County, that city, major city of Florida. And if it is only 1.5 hour away, usually in Mumbai and all, any city that is only a couple of hours away from your city will have only 2 to 3 degree difference, or 4 degree maximum difference in temperatures, because you're very nearby cities. So if that is going on, then it is not possible that that day the temperatures arose above 80, or it was more closer to 80 than 90 degree. And which is a very important factor, because 80 degrees temperature hot sun many people can tolerate, while 90 to 100 degrees hot sun many people cannot tolerate. So that is one factor that needs to be rechecked, I believe. And the second thing, then why is the baby so hot if the temperature was not a 90-degree temperature? People are assuming on a hot summer day, 90-degree temperatures day, if a child gets burnt in a car or gets dehydration and then dies as a result of it, you can understand, because it was a 90-100 degree day and the child was left in the car for a couple of hours. But what if it was not that high degree day? And all the timelines also need to be re-examined, because let's say her appointment was 12 o'clock. If she intimidated her mom that can you come and pick me, I have a hair appointment, can you pick the baby, and I think the mom went to the hair dresser's place to take the child. So at that time, if let's say the mom was, it was a last minute thing, right? So if she has texted her mom at around 11 o'clock, the mom has to get ready, and she's an elderly woman and having a relaxed life, and she also had already that day plans apparently to go and pick up the grandson, also other grandson of the other daughter. So and this also thing needs to be investigated, because there were two conflicting reports that were given, and whether the conflicting reports was deliberately given conflictingly, or whether there was a mistaken thing going on that day, that also needs to be examined. And there is a third thing that also needs to be examined, and these all seem very complex. So I'm going to end this video here. I'm also getting very tired and exhausted because I have health issues concurrently right now. So I need some water, I need some rest, and I will reconvene. But understand this, there are many factors that need to be examined in this women's case that have not been examined, that are ancillary factors. And about earth pollution also, I'll give detailed example of why earth pollution also likely was responsible for that child's death. But until then, please ponder about this part 1 video and the elements I have tried to introduce, but I will explain more in detail, and I understand how the data also can be found out to support or detract from what I'm going to claim in the next video. So whatever I'm claiming in this video or in the next video that could have potentially happened, that data can also be gathered if the right forensic analysis, right scrutiny of what happened that day is done, like deeper scrutiny. I'm not saying right scrutiny was not done, but everyone assumed it was a 90-degree day, but it was a day in November. In November, that hot temperatures were not present in Florida area. I want someone to double check whether what was the temperature of that area. That is a crucial factor. But a hot baby was nonetheless found. So then how was a hot baby found? The hot baby can still be found at a 80 degree or 75 degree place, Fahrenheit temperature place, like the highest temperature was 75. If the highest temperature is 75 during the whole afternoon that she was left in the car, it would have ranged between 70 to 75. Then if the highest temperature was 80, it would have ranged between 75 to 80. And 70 and 75 degrees are much cooler temperatures that most people do not have any trouble staying in a car or staying in the, but the car would have gotten a slightly more heated. That is definitely a factor. So if there is a breeze around, and whichever country is in the sea area, so I looked at the map of this county. It is very much around the sea, so there should be good beautiful breeze also happening. So if good beautiful breeze was going around, and if the windows were not completely closed or the door, then also the child wouldn't have died simply out of being there out there in the sun and inside the car. So those factors, wind conditions, temperature conditions are necessary. Whether there was any rainfall that day or precipitation that day, that is also necessary. Some satellite images are also needed to confirm some other things I want to talk about, which I'll make in the second video. And satellite images should be available in that area, because that's a area of high. If you've watched Miami Vice, you know why that area could potentially have satellite surveillance and other surveillance systems also present, which will help in determining further about this woman's case, because it is necessary that people wake up to what happened to this woman for multiple reasons. The first reason itself is mothers can get blamed for things that they may not be responsible for. My dad, throughout his at least 10 years of before my mother died, I continuously heard many things about my mother which was absolutely untrue or only partly true about her, which if my mother was in a better marriage, that would not even have been a problem in those marriages, or it would have only led to minor conflicts in their marriages. But instead, because she was in a particular kind of marriage where everything she did was a problem, because there are people who have some problem oriented mentality, that everything another person does, even if they are doing their best, can end up looking like a problem. So I believe the grandmother was doing her best. I also believe there were factors that the grandmother herself didn't know was impacting her health, all of which needs to be investigated, not just for this grandmother, but for other grandparents who are going to look after their grandchildren in this area or any other country of the world where such problems are existing. It is a grander context problem of global health related levels of multiple kinds that I'm discussing here. First kind is about family abuse or family patterns. Second kind is related to hidden abuse, covert abuse. Third is about hidden factors that of environment pollution that people don't understand, that can impact their health. And I'll make a second video detailing about what I mean. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.